Hi, Mark and Debbie. How are you?
We're good. How are you, Brandon?
Good to
Good.
see you.
Good to see you too. So we have your financial plan ready to go here.
Great. We're anxious to see what you have.
Pulled up. So before we start, do you have any questions for me?
No, I don't think so. We had those quite a large number of questions, and I imagine they're in the slideshow.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll be covering those a little bit today here too. So one of the main questions that comes up when people think about retirement is, and we know retirement's around the corner, how do we get there? So it's like you have a destination in mind, you know, where you want to go, but you're not sure how to get there. So the same thing happens with retirement. That's our job, is to help you get there and answer those questions of how do we get there. So today we'll be covering three main sections. The first is your retirement planning priorities. That is the destination. That's the goal. That's, you know, where you want to get to.
Mhm.
Then we'll cover your retirement planning priorities. Or after we cover your retirement planning priorities, we'll cover your retirement questions. So that's a part of how do we get there, right? So we
Mhm.
know where we want to be, what steps do we take to get there? And then lastly, we'll cover your respective current plans and your recommended plans in 7 topic areas, which are cash flow net worth plan, your education funding plan, your investments plan, your retirement plan, risk management plan, tax plan, and your estate plan. So those
Great.
essentially become your map, right?
Looks comprehensive.
Good, yeah, it's meant to be. So these are your retirement planning priorities. When we met the first time, you wanted to cover what is most important to you. At the top of your list, at a 10 is charitable giving. And then down from there, we have annual travel and your house renovation, both at a 7. We have your new car purchases, both at a 6. And then finally, we have your lowest priorities, which are vacation condo in the Denver area and your 2 grandchildren's education plans, all at a 4. Does that look
Hmm.
right?
It is.
Yeah, good job.
Perfect. So when it comes to your client priority summary, we want to focus on what's important to you. And so your top priorities, all at a 6 or above, are 100% funded with our plan. So
Oh, that's reassuring.
we've found a way for you to accomplish these goals, and we'll explain how you'll do that as we go through this conversation. Some of your lower priorities, which are listed at a 4, we either have on hold or partially funded, and that's because they're not at the top of your list. And if that does change, we can always make adjustments. So
Okay.
I look for you. So what I thought we'd do is, since you had so many questions about how do we get there, how do we get to retirement, all of those questions fall under 7 main categories that we talked about at the beginning. So
Mhm.
through each of those 7 categories, and you can highlight the area there, and then let me know if any of those questions stands out.
Okay. Those look good.
So the cash flow net worth looks good.
Okay.
Education. Yeah. Mainly grandchildren's college. Good.
The investments planning, have we done a good job so far?
You have done a good job so far. Great work.
Thank you.
Retirement planning. Yeah, for me, well, for us, probably that should we pay off our mortgage? We're just not sure whether we should or shouldn't.
Yeah, great question. So that comes up a lot. And obviously, with the funds available, which you do have, you might wonder, should we just go ahead and pay off the $230,000, own our home before we start retirement? Or is it better to keep going since our payments are low, our interest rate is really low? Should we just keep it as is? So great question, and we'll discuss that during this
Okay.
conversation.
Okay. Risk management questions. I think the pros and cons of long-term care insurance are probably interesting to me.
Yeah, and you all are at the tail end of when you can still apply for long-term care insurance. So we'll go through our recommendation on that. And as it is now, you're looking at a short time before you would no longer be able to have long-term care insurance. So we'll discuss that.
Okay.
Okay.
Tax planning is always high on our priority list. It's just, how do we minimize taxes for the future? It just seems like everything's being taxed.
Yeah, great question. And we do have strategies that we'll recommend to you. The more you can keep in your own pocket and not have to pay in taxes is always beneficial.
Bingo.
Estate planning. What other documents do we need?
Yeah, so that's a good question too, because you want to have everything in place so that, you know, your assets transfer smoothly to your heirs. So getting those in place is always important. So those are all good questions, and I do want to let you know that all of your questions do have answers. And so since we provided you with a written document of your comprehensive financial plan, in that document, we've included a summary of where you can find the answers to your questions within that document. So these next few slides show you where you can find the answers to your questions. We'll kind of jump through those fairly quickly here. It's just to show you that those answers are there for you.
Okay, good reference guide.
So jumping into the first topic area here, which is your cash flow and net worth plan. Our first recommendation for you is to make more effective use of your discretionary cash flows and excess savings. Anytime you have cash just sitting in your checking account, it's not working for you. So what we want to do is keep enough in your checking and savings accounts that you have good liquidity if an emergency were to come up. But beyond that, you really want to make sure that you transfer that into a higher return account. So we can move some of your funds into a high yield savings account and then about 95,000 into an investment brokerage account so you can earn better returns.
Okay.
Looking now at your net worth. So you have a net worth of about $2.8 million. And so that's where you stand today on your net worth. And moving now into our second recommendation for you, which is to manage your retirement cash flows. So as you can see in this chart, you have a lot of spikes and dips, and that's volatility to your annual cash flows. You have a high of 630,000 one year and a low of 77,000 the next year. We want to even this out. And by following our recommendations, we'll be able to do that for you. So with our recommendations, you can see your new cash flows here in this screen. So what you bring in matches what you spend. And that's
So it just equalizes the cash flow.
Exactly. And so it smooths out your highs and your lows, putting your average right around 240,000 per year of inflows. And then our third recommendation is to manage your retirement cash outflows. So same idea here. You had a high of 378,000 in one year, and then 153,000 in the next year. We can even those out and put you at an even 240,000 per year. So that's why your inflows and your outflows match up.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and then finally, your net worth, so you're about 2.8, 2.9 million today. And then by the end of the plan here in 2058, we're looking at 6,050,000 as your net worth. So about doubling, more than doubling for your net worth.
So plenty of money to cover our expenses till our end of our lifespan.
Correct. Exactly. Yep. You've done a great job saving. And with our recommendations, you should be in good shape. So moving on to the education plan, one of the things you mentioned is potentially funding 100% of Kaysen and NOAA's education funds. So what we're looking at is about 308,000 for Kaysen's plan, and then about 346,000 for NOAA's plan. And so instead of funding 100% of those plans, which would be detrimental to your cash flows, what we're recommending is funding 50% of those plans. So about by doing this, you can still contribute quite a bit. So 154,000 to Kaysen's plan, and then about 173,000 to NOAA's plan. So you're still contributing quite a bit to their education. You know that's important to you, and it helps your cash flows throughout retirement as well.
Well, we've always thought our grandchildren, a little work never hurt anybody.
Good. Yeah, I'm glad you taught them that. So moving on to our investment plan, one of the things is that your strategic asset allocation is misaligned. So when we talk about your strategic asset allocation, we're talking about your mixture of equities, fixed income, and cash. So right now you're at about 75% equities, 17% fixed income, 2% alternatives, and 6% cash. And what we would like to see for you is to actually be at 50% equities, 45% fixed income, and 5% cash. So that aligns better with your risk tolerance level, and we can help you get there. And the way you do that is by following our first recommendation, which in this case is to adjust your strategic allocation. You can see that paragraph there on the left. Those are all of the trades that we put in for you to get you there. And that would put you at about 53% in equities, 43% fixed income, and about 4% cash. So pretty close to where you want to be.
Yeah.
So another portion that's misaligned is that your current tactical asset allocation is misaligned with your target tactical asset allocation. So you have about 40%, 47% of your funds that are misaligned. So we can put in trades for you that will align your tactical asset allocation with your target tactical asset allocation. So you can see in this slide, this is where you want to be in terms of each exposure, large cap growth, large cap value, etc. And so what we'll do is make those trades for you, and that will put you at 87% of your funds properly aligned. So you have about 15 different categories there. 13 of the 15 would be in line with where you want to be. And all of this gets us to a place called the efficient frontier, which is making sure that you're maximizing your returns given the amount of risk that you're taking. Ideally, we would be exactly on the efficient frontier. That's not possible though, so we'll get you as close as we can. And that way, we make sure to keep your investments in line with the level of risk you're willing to take while maximizing your returns.
I like that.
So when it comes to your retirement plan, you can see here in this slide that you're at a 50% probability of success. So that's pretty low and not where we want to see you. So following our retirement plan recommendations, we'll be able to improve your likelihood of success. So our first recommendation is to continue paying your mortgage as is. You have a great interest rate at 2.5%. Your time frame is about 15 years, so not too long into retirement that you can have that completely paid off. So that's our recommendation, is rather than taking $230,000 now as a lump sum from your retirement accounts and paying that off, since the payments are doable, not a long time frame, I recommend keep it as is.
Okay.
Our second recommendation is to take Social Security at full retirement age at age 67 for you, Mark. So we know you want to retire as early as possible. You wouldn't want to take Social Security before that age. It would be reduced quite a bit. And if you wait longer, then you would have to work longer. So there's a trade-off there, and that's why we're recommending at 67.
So finally collect something from the government instead of them collecting from us all the
Exactly.
time.
You put it in, here's your chance to take it out. Yep. Our third recommendation is to purchase Mark's new vehicle in 2025 and then every 5 years there, or every 7 years thereafter. I know you had mentioned you want to do it about every 5 years. Ours last a long time these days, well over 100,000 miles. So our recommendation is about every 7 years. Our fourth recommendation is very similar. So this is Debbie's new vehicle. That's in year 2027, about the same value. And we would also recommend doing that about every 7 years.
And we do a pretty good job on maintenance, so I think
good.
an extra 2 years would be pretty feasible.
Okay, good. Glad to hear that. So it sounds fairly doable for you.
Mm-hmm.
Our fifth recommendation is to add ADA upgrades to your home in a total of 50,000 over a 10-year period. Originally, we had discussed doing that all in 1 year, lump sum of 50,000. However, to even out your cash flows, especially your outflows, what we're recommending is to do that over a 10-year period, especially since you won't need them right away and you're in such good health.
Mm-hmm.
And our sixth recommendation is to hold off purchasing a vacation condo. So the reason for this is that a lot of times we see that if you purchase a vacation home in another state, as time goes on, it becomes more difficult to travel there as frequently as you would like. Also, it means additional debt and interest payments that you would be making. There are a lot of great ways to stay in locations that are fairly cost effective with Airbnb and other vacation rental services. So that's our recommendation, is to hold off on the vacation condo for now. It's certainly doable. It's just a matter of whether that's a high enough priority for you.
Well, Deb's been trying to convince me of that for a long time. I'm kind of the pie in the sky kind of guy. And
Right.
she's been trying to convince me we should hold off.
Well, it's still on the table, just not right now, and we'll see what the future holds. And our last recommendation in this section is for Mark to teach part-time. So when you retire, Mark, that's a significant change in your source of income, going from salary to Social Security. By working an additional 3 years part-time, you have great flexibility, and you can make about 50,000 per year teaching part-time. So that really helps your cash inflows the initial years of retirement.
Yeah, and I really do enjoy teaching, and so maybe Texas Tech can add a ramp and a cane that they can give me for free.
Yeah, you're going to teach forever? Teach
forever till I'm 92.
92? Awesome.
Yeah, I'll have a cane.
That's awesome. Glad to hear you enjoy it so much. And ultimately, this leads us to an 85% probability of success. So where we started out at 50%, didn't have really great chances of achieving your preferred lifestyle during retirement. And now with our recommendations, you're in a much better place.
Good. So we just increased our gambling odds.
So this is now your risk management plan. So you've got most of the areas covered. You'll notice the long-term care insurance, which is what you brought up earlier, Debbie. So you don't have any long-term care insurance right now. Some of these other areas you do have coverage, but it's not adequate. So we'll discuss that also. First recommendation for you is to continue with your Health Select of Texas plan. That's your current medical coverage through Texas Tech University. Then at 65, enroll in Medicare, receive those benefits you paid into them. And then when Mark retires, fortunately, they have good coverage through your retiree benefits through Texas Tech University. So you can enroll in the Health Select Advantage plan, which will replace your Medicare, along with the prescription plan through Texas Tech retiree benefits. That'll cover Part D of Medicare for you. Our
Mhm.
second recommendation is to purchase a combined long-term care policy. So long-term care is always a cost-benefit analysis, right? There's a chance you may never need it. There's also a chance you could need it, and it can be
Mhm.
very costly, right? So with this, for about annual premium of $7,000 a year, you can get $330,000 of coverage. So if something were to happen and you were to be in a long-term care facility for a year or two, this would cover a huge majority of those expenses, and it's within your current budget and cash flows to do that. So we're recommending that you do purchase a plan.
Okay.
Mhm.
Our third recommendation is to add 50% extended dwelling coverage to your homeowner's insurance. So currently your home's worth about $300,000. It's doubled since you bought it. And so with it being worth $600,000, we're recommending adding additional coverage to your homeowner's insurance.
Makes sense.
Our fourth recommendation is to increase your car insurance coverage. You're currently at the bare minimum required under state laws. And if you were to get into an accident, unfortunately, costs today are just ever increasing, especially for healthcare, medical expenses. So due to that, we're recommending additional coverage for your autos. And our fifth recommendation is to purchase a personal liability umbrella policy. The great news is that for very low cost and annual premium, you can get $2 million worth of liability coverage. Again,
Oh.
there are risks everywhere, and with you going into retirement, we want to make sure you protect your retirement assets and that they're not subject to some kind of lawsuit or litigation. So for that reason, we're recommending the purchase of a liability umbrella policy for you.
Okay.
So this moves us into your tax plan. As you can see from this chart here, there are different marginal tax brackets, and this is a place where spikes in income or investment withdrawals can move you into a higher marginal tax bracket. So that's why we wanted to even out your income initially. And with your inherited IRA, if you were to leave the majority of those funds to the last year, you would end up taking $570,000 distribution in the last year and move up close to the 35% tax bracket. So you mentioned wanting to save money on taxes. That's why we've evened out those distributions for you.
Excellent.
That makes sense.
We know that charitable giving is a top priority for you. So our first recommendation is to establish a donor advised fund. Every penny that you contribute to a donor advised fund is immediately tax deductible. So you can fully fund all of your retirement donations with a one-time contribution to a donor advised fund of about $138,000.
Wow.
So that's our
And
first.
then just distribute the donations over whatever period of time we want.
Exactly. So over the time frame of your retirement until 2058, so starting in 3 years, in fact, it does even cover the next 3 years until retirement, as well as all throughout retirement. That one-time contribution would allow for those donations, assuming your rate of returns around 12% on your stock position.
Okay.
Our second recommendation is to take annual distributions of $45,000 from Debbie's inherited IRA. So rather than taking those in the lump sum, which we saw would hurt your tax status, we're recommending taking those evenly throughout the 10 years. Our third recommendation is to utilize tax loss harvesting. So you have a position in Bitcoin. And so since your Bitcoin strategy ETF is down right now, we're recommending taking 9,000 this year. You can use 3,000 to take a tax loss harvest and then carry forward the next 6,000 over the next 3 years until you retire.
Okay.
And our fourth recommendation is to maximize your Roth contributions. You're not currently maximizing your Roth contributions into your 457 plan. So you do recommend adding an additional 18,000 per year to maximize that contribution to a tax-free growth account. And that will be, a $60,000 difference in value by 2026.
Excellent.
So that sums up your tax plan. As you can see, we've kept you below those marginal tax bracket increases, and we've evened out your distributions so that you can minimize your taxes.
And that equalized our income as well.
Exactly right. Yep. So it evens out your annual income throughout retirement. So last section here is your estate plan. So currently you don't have an estate plan. And what that means is that when you pass away, whatever transfers to your heirs could be subject to probate. So probate is the court process. So when you pass away and we have all of these assets left over, we don't know where to put them. Ultimately, a judge has to decide for you. Well, that's a long process, as you can imagine, and it's a costly process, can be expensive. So the best way to avoid that is to have an estate plan. So our first recommendation is to assign beneficiaries to all available accounts and policies. The great news is that by assigning beneficiaries to your accounts, those assets avoid probate. So as soon as we know that you have assets and who they go to when you pass away through beneficiary designation, you don't have to worry about going through the probate process. So that's one of the recommendations. It's usually very simple to do that online. Really in minutes, you can assign beneficiaries to all of your accounts. Our second recommendation is to update all of your relevant estate planning documents. So those include your will, your durable powers of attorney, your advanced medical directive, and your final letter of last instruction. So these all ensure that your assets go to the right places, to the right people, in the right amounts, right? And you mentioned that it's been quite a while since you were able to update your will. So that's something we suggest doing right away. And then having powers of attorney can make sure that you don't end up in a position where you're incapacitated and nobody has the ability to manage your affairs for you.
That's smart.
So any questions for me on that? I know that was an important question for you. You mentioned earlier. Any questions for me on that?
No, I guess you would recommend an estate attorney of some kind, somebody that deals with estates and understands
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah, great question. So you'll want to work with a licensed attorney in the state of Texas to set up your estate plan. And we can recommend one for you. We do have a preferred attorney we work with for our clients. Also, if you know one already and you're happy with that relationship, that works as well.
Right.
Our third recommendation for you is to consider establishing a revocable living trust and an irrevocable trust. So there are advantages to both of them. Revocable trust, you can change along the way and make updates. An irrevocable trust has the advantage that it's sort of set in stone. You don't have to worry about somebody outside coming in, through marriage or whatever the situation is, trying to make changes to that plan. And it's also excludable from your taxable estate. So you can exclude that from your taxable assets by setting up an irrevocable trust. Now, these become more important as your net worth continues to grow. So if you're looking at this chart here, you can see that in 10, 20 years, we may move up into $5 million, $6 million dollars worth of value in your estate. And so we want to make sure that we have a way to transfer those assets as early as possible to the right people. So that's what establishing a trust will do for you. It will make sure that you can designate who receives the assets and when they receive them.
Yeah, I think we'll get on that right away.
Great. Our fourth recommendation for you is to consider establishing a charitable remainder trust. So we know that donating to charities is really important to you. You listed that as a 10 out of 10 on your priorities. So this is just an additional option for you to set up a charitable remainder trust. You can put funds into that trust and receive income from it throughout your retirement. And then whatever's left over at the end, you can donate to a charity. So that's a good way to designate funds for a charity of your choice, but also receive income from that trust while you're still living. Again,
and is that tax-free? Is that trust, the money that goes into that trust, tax-free?
Yeah, exactly. So what happens is they would receive those funds excluded from your estate because they're going to a charity, and then whatever income you do receive from that trust, that would then be part of your income. But that's a way to help you, fund your retirement and designate a donation to a charity. So it's just an additional option. You already have a donor advised fund, so you don't need a charitable remainder trust. It's just an option for you.
Okay, great.
So ultimately, this leads us here to your estate plan, which in this case, if Mark, if you were to pass away, these are the values or approximate values we're looking at. And through the unlimited marital deduction, Debbie, you would receive these funds likely tax-free. So if you were to pass away first, Mark, then Debbie would receive the estate plan. And then finally, we have Debbie's estate plan. So these are the assets that we would want to transfer to your remaining heirs. So it would be your two kids, Chris and Sarah, and then also your two grandchildren, Case and Noah.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, those are all of our recommendations, and we've covered all of the topics that we were going to discuss today. Do you all have any questions for me?
Wow, that's probably the most comprehensive plan I've been part of and seen. Let's see, any questions you can think of that hasn't?
Well, I think you covered everything pretty comprehensive. It seems like your recommendations are calculated into our monthly expenses, so we make sure that everything's covered and compensated. It's not outside of what you've already planned.
Exactly. Yeah. So fortunately, we have a great software program that we can use to calculate those expenses and recommendations into your annual cash flows. So when we make a recommendation, we can see how that affects your annual cash flows and make sure that you stay on track for your retirement. So it's ultimately through those recommendations that we get from a place of 50% likelihood of success to 85% likelihood of success.
The only other thing I have is that Texas Tech just started in our 401 a Roth plan. Do you recommend that I start putting money into that Roth plan versus the traditional?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so fortunately in your retirement plan, you do have a Roth 457 account and you're already contributing to that plan. Going back to one of our previous recommendations, we do recommend maximizing those contributions. So at $30,000, right around $30,000 per year, you maximize those contributions, and we are recommending that you do that.
Okay. Yeah. This is wonderful. I think it's exactly what we needed. We'd probably like to read through it just a little bit more and then talk with you a little later about any other recommendations or further questions, but I think you've actually answered all the questions we had.
Excellent. Yeah. Happy to hear that you have most of your questions answered. We do have additional details in your written plan that you'll be able to go through as you read that. And we're always happy to meet with you again to answer any additional questions you have or make adjustments or changes to your current plan.
Okay,
Perfect.
yeah.
Are your fees calculated in our monthly cash flow?
Right.
You're worth every penny.
Well, glad to hear it. And those are factored into your cash flows. And fortunately, you're right on track to pay those fees.
Yeah, I think my last thought is I'll be talking with Texas Tech probably tomorrow about canes and wheelchairs. So I'll see if they'll make sure everything's kosher for me up through age 92.
Yeah, awesome. I'm sure they'll get everything ready for you. Everything that you need, they'll take care of.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brandon.
All right, good to see you. Thanks for your time. See you
Talk
soon.
to you soon. Okay.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.